Hey everybody, it's Trinity from the Divine Path LLC and Moonstone Mystics. Here for a daily recovery tarot reading. So, if you are spiritually inclined or would like to be, because you're in recovery and out of alignment, this one is exactly what you need. All right. So today I'm going to be using the Key Master Tarot. Just in case you decide you want to look that up and get it for yourself. It's really an awesome deck. Oops. Oh. Someone's feeling stuck. That's okay. Let's figure out how we can fix that stuckness. All right, so now that I'm shuffled and all of that jazz, I actually discussed with a really good friend of mine in recovery last night about what the theme for today should be. Because I usually do like, what do we need to know for today? And I'm getting tired of that. I want to switch it up. I want to spice it up. Because I'm spicy like that. So what I want to do is ask Spirit or Source or the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. It's how you understand it. Remember that. Because it's not my job to tell you how you view God. Or your higher power, or whatever you want to call it. Doorknob, chair, plant. Doesn't matter. Just make sure that it can't talk back. Unless it's, you've gotten to the point where you have conscious contact with it. That's different. But no people, places, or things. Anyway, so I wanted to kind of look at the concept of finding our part in step 4. So step 4 is making a fearless and moral inventory of ourselves. And then step 5 is sharing that with another human being. Okay, and so one of the things that we're doing in step 4 is we're trying to find patterns in our behavior so that we can change, because we can't change what we don't see. We can't change what we can't acknowledge. So it's not about shame. It's not about, you are bad. It's, hey, these are the things that you're doing that you could change to change the trajectory of your future. So let's go ahead and see how we can determine what our part is in it, especially if it's a situation where it's unclear. Okay, so Spirit, what is the best way to find our part when we're doing our step 4? Fears and resentments. Oh, okay. All right, so I have 4 cards pulled, and we may get clarification here pretty soon. All right, so first and foremost, start with a loving attitude toward the self, because having that guilt and shame coloring it will not allow you to see a different perspective. Right? Next one is the 10 of Pentacles. The next one is the Star. And the next one is the 9 of Wands. Okay. So what I'm hearing in this as I'm looking at these cards is that first and foremost, you need to approach this step in a way that's very loving toward the self, like we just said, but also where you are expecting through your efforts to see a change for the better. You want to make it so that you're laying everything out, because when we lay things out and we admit them and we see them and we make changes to our behavior, then we get this 10 of Pentacles. This is talking about family legacy. So we're seeing family legacy, family patterns that you may have adopted from your parents before you, your grandparents. A lot of times when we are in recovery, we have to not only look at our own personal patterns, but the patterns that we've inherited, so that we can then turn around and teach our children differently. Because it doesn't do us any good to change our own behavior when we're, passing on those traits. The whole point of all of this is to break the generational cycles, okay? The next one is to also have an attitude of healing. So you're doing this in order to heal and bring about positivity in your life. And then the Nine of Wands is that is a card about being guarded. So that means that you're kind of looking out at the landscape and not moving forward without caution. So one of the things that until we can get the hang of those changes in patterns, because it's incredibly hard to change behavior, it is best to think and contemplate and get guidance before moving forward, before making it an action, which is a huge reason why in 12-step programs we have a sponsor and we have a list of people who, they always say hang out with winners. That's what that means. People who have had established sobriety, who have gone through the experience that you are, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a 12-step program. I've actually met people who have gone into recovery and have been recovered for over 20 years, and they, have aligned themselves spiritually, so they no longer have a spiritual malady, which is the root of the problem, and they seem to be doing just fine. The goal in it is to have a happy life. But in order for us to do that, we need to look at our own behaviors. We need to seek guidance before we start making decisions about, how we should respond to things. So taking a step back, being calm, and allowing ourselves to be teachable and guided through this process is going to be really key. All right. How else can we determine our part in the resentments that we have? Okay, so there was another one. I saw it. This one and this one. Okay. All right. Page of Cups. Now, I am hearing that means taking a newcomer perspective. I have done the steps more than once. And I know some people who have the philosophy of, once you've gone through the steps, if you have the same sponsor, you can continue with the 10th step and then you don't have to do the steps again. And then I know others that do the steps once a year, that in each month is a step that they focus on and study. So it just depends on what works for you. But it's always good to have, approach it from the standpoint of you're ready to learn new things about it. So, being able to be teachable, but in a very loving way. All right. We have got the Eight of Pentacles. So, understanding that you're going to have to work at it. This is a program of mastery. We're trying to master the self. We're trying to master our mindset, so that we can respond rather than react. So that we can better handle life on life's terms. Okay? And then we have the Six of Pentacles. So this also allows us to work better with other people, take them as they are, instead of trying to change them. What else, Spirit? How can we find our own part? That one. All right. Okay. So, Five of Wands. And I'm hearing that this goes along with the Six of Coins. When working with others, make sure that it isn't turning into a battle of the ego. Oftentimes when we have conflicts with other people, it's this battle of the ego that we're struggling with. When we have really alleviated this internal sense of ego, the ego is there for a reason. It helps keep us safe, but it's when we... I had a very good friend of mine. Her name is Glenda. She and I were talking, and she said, your ego can be a good thing, but where it becomes a problem is when you give it the keys to the car and you let it drive around. So this is making sure that you're not giving it the keys to the car. And that will allow you to work better with other people. All right, and they said to split. Okay, so we've got the Four of Pentacles. This is I'm not going with the direct meaning of it because intuitively my guides are telling me that this is talking about keeping your side of the street clean, reining in your emotions, not trying to control other people, trying to just making sure that you are paying attention to yourself, paying attention to your own recovery, and working on the self instead of other people. So I guess the first message that I would say as far as finding our part in our fears and resentments is looking at where we are trying to manipulate and control other people instead of trying to fix ourselves and work on ourselves and taking them as who they are. What I would also say when I'm looking at this, I'm hearing that if you cannot, like, if you've been in a situation where you've been in an abusive situation, obviously there's going to be fears and resentments toward the perpetrator of the abuse. Again, none of this is about blame. It's about noticing our own patterns, and you may have not done anything wrong to them other than the fact that you chose them. And if that is the case, that is your part in it. So again, no guilt and shame. You may not have known any better, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you identify the pattern that you are choosing these people, and I've heard people say, like, your picker's broken, and and there is a truism to that, especially like when we're looking at romantic relationships, but it can bleed over into platonic relationships. It can bleed over into our choices of employment. Our pickers could be broken, and it's not that we're broken, it's more that we are seeing something that we've been in and therefore for a long time, and therefore it's comfortable to us. So we may slip into relationships that have similar patterns that we're used to, and that's almost like the brain goes on autopilot. So we're trying to switch it off of autopilot, which is kind of the paradox of recovery, because we're supposed to give our will and our life over to our higher power as we understand it, which means releasing control. And yet we're being asked to, look at ourselves and keep our side of the street clean. So that's where conscious contact will come in handy, because your higher power will give you the next right steps. And if you don't have that conscious contact yet, that is something that will develop over time with prayer and meditation, following the steps and working a program. Your intuition will turn on eventually, but until that time happens, that's where a sponsor comes in. That's where people with longevity in their own sobriety and recovery, most importantly, you can be sober and be just as much of an asshole as, someone who's drinking and using. So, and that's what we call a dry drunk. But if you can really look at your own part of it, and control, meaning like saying the Serenity Prayer, grant me the strength. Oh, hold on. The serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So that's discerning what can you control, what can't you control, and how do you tell the difference. And that's what you learn in the program. And that part of what we can control is our own behaviors and responses, looking at the patterns that we have, noticing when we're getting into a relationship that those red flags are there, and then having the courage to be able to walk away from those red flags, looking at what we can do, because if you're going into a relationship and you're thinking, oh, we can work on this, we can change it. Maybe one chance is fine, but more than that, like if that the boundaries aren't being respected, walk away. If and that's for any relationship whatsoever, because you do not need people in your life who are not respectful of boundaries. And then, flipping that on its head, you need to be respectful of other people's boundaries. So if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, that really bothered me," take and listen to them. Respect what they're telling you. And if you don't agree with those boundaries, again, walk away because you're wasting their time too. So it's all about finding that harmony within boundaries because boundaries are a blessing. All right. So let me go ahead and get one final message. I am hearing the archetypes. Oracle is what we need to look at. All right. One final message or an attitude that we need to adopt when we're approaching this step. Thank you. Oh, one fell right. Oh, so this card was on the split, and apparently that's the card that I was meant to see. So we have Rebel. All right. So the light attributes are challenges authority to effect social change, rejects spiritual systems that do not serve the inner needs. The shadow aspect is rejects legitimate authority out of anger, rebels against peer pressure or fashion. So again, this is talking about, how much is your ego influencing your rebellious nature? Okay. So, and honestly, the part that's standing out is rejects spiritual systems that do not serve the inner needs. I can honestly say that a lot of people who come into the program are dealing with religious trauma from the past. And one thing I have always struggled with is when I am like in a church or in a different spiritual community, whatever that looks like, when someone is starting to make moves that indicate that they're trying to control people through fear in order to keep power, I have a problem with that. And so coming into the rooms and I really bucked against the system because I was like, I don't want to be controlled in that way by someone who is just trying to make me scared of everything. I already have enough fear that I'm dealing with. Oftentimes, a lot of our problems, even anger and resentment, can be traced back to a fear that we have. Like, and people who behave, like anybody, I mean, any living thing behaves, and there are 4 reasons why we behave. We want something, we want attention, we want sensory input, feeling something soft feels good, especially in early recovery. That's why people are attracted to like soft clothing or soft pillows and blankets, soothing music, that sort of thing. And the other one is to escape. And so as addicts, we escape a lot, oftentimes because we're not getting a need met. But those are the 4 reasons why we behave the way that we do. And so if you can identify what you really truly are after, why you're behaving in a certain way, then you can actually meet your internal need. Any spiritual practice should be aligning you with identifying that, not trying to scare you into behaving in a certain way because you're bad. Remember that recovery is not to condemn you. It is not to shame you. It's not to tell you that you have been wrong. You may have been wrong, but we're not about guilt and shame. We're about realigning ourselves so that we can understand what our higher power's will for us is in our lives, and then make moves to get into alignment with that, because we not only make our own lives better when we do that, we also are making the world a better place. So anyway, I wish you a happy recovery. And if anyone Or if no one has told you today that they love you, know that I do. Thanks so much. Take care.